May He, by His pleasure, protect us. Purport. The impersonal Brahman, which is the effulgence of the Lord, is described in this verse. Om Jnana-timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivasadi Gaur Bhakta-vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So we are the conditioned souls in the material world since time immemorial. We've been here for many lifetimes of Brahma. And we are here to enjoy independently or separately from Krishna. That's why we are here, due to our faulty desire of lording it over material nature, of trying to imitate Krishna. Krishna has unwillingly put us in the material world. And the material world is a place for reformation of the jiva. Just like in any state, there is a prison house which is meant for the reformation of the rebellious or non-law-abiding citizens. The idea is they go in there and come out transformed a different person. But we know that most of the time it doesn't happen. But the material world is a place where a term of imprisonment is as long as we desire it to be. But because we are so stubbornly opposed to Krishna, our term of imprisonment, which is evident by these material bodies, the very fact we look in the mirror and we see this body, this is an imprisonment. This is our prison dress. We are wearing this dress just like the prisoners are given maybe an orange suit or a suit with white, black and white stripes on it. So when we see this body, male, female, insect, cockroach, or whatever, we can understand that we are in prison and this is our dress. This is the dress we are wearing. And as we change prisons, we are given a different dress. We might go from one prison to the other. So you might go from a fish body to a plant body to maybe an animal body to a human body to a different kind of human body and maybe even a demigod body. So these are like different dresses that are given to us within the prison house of material nature. And depending on a body, we are allowed a certain level of happiness and distress, depending on what body we have. And depending on the body we have, we act in a certain way, because the body conditions us to act in a certain way. So with these material bodies, we perceive things according to our experience within this world. So we are conditioned by our experiences in this world, and we impose the same conditioning on the Supreme Lord. So most people question, most human beings at some point in their life, they question the very nature of existence. What is their purpose? Is there a God? There might be a God. Maybe there's an energy, or I don't know. God is whatever you think it is. So in this way, we impose our own material conditioning in trying to understand the Supreme Lord. And here, as it is said, that the words and mind of the conditioned soul cannot approach the Supreme Lord, who is entirely spiritual. So Krishna is Satchid Ananda Vigraha. Krishna's form is composed of eternity, bliss, and knowledge. And it's a form, Vigraha. And this form has unlimited potencies. Parasha Shakti Vividhaiva, right? Shruvate. So Krishna's form is full of unlimited potencies. Krishna's form is different from our form. Us and Krishna, the Jiva and Krishna, are same in quality. Prabhupada gives this example many times of the ocean and the drop of water. The drop of water and the ocean have the same qualities, but there's a difference in quantity. So Krishna has unlimited potencies, and through his unlimited potencies, he's orchestrating the creation, maintenance, destruction of the world, and even orchestrating his various pastimes. So Krishna has his internal potency, external potency, and the marginal potency. So we the jivas are the tatashta, or the marginal potency. We have a choice to be in Krishna's lila, the internal energy, or we have a choice to be in the material energy, to try to perform our own leelas here. And that's what everyone's doing. They're trying to perform their leelas independent of Krishna. And sometimes people write books on autobiography on their leela, right? And people will read about it. But there's no benefit in reading the leelas of the conditioned soul, no matter how famous they are. Because that is compared to the place where the crows go. It is said in the Srimad-Bhagavatam, I think in the 5th chapter. Yes, it said in the 10th verse of the 5th chapter, Nayad vachas chitra padam Hare yasho jagat pavitram pragninita karichit tadvayasam tirtham ushanti manasa nayatra hamsa niramanti ushikshayaha. Those words which do not describe the glories of the Lord, who alone can sanctify the atmosphere of the whole universe, are considered by saintly persons to be like unto a place of pilgrimage for crows. So, such books, autobiographies, or even any mundane literature, or recitations, or TED Talks or whatever, these are like a place of pilgrimage for crows. So you can maybe visualize the audience as crows. And they're coming to hear this garbage. So it is compared to that because it has no spiritual substance. And you go there, you listen to that. One is simply caught up, further entangled in the 3 modes of material nature, depending on what the subject matter is. If it is very sensuous, maybe in the modes of passion or ignorance, then one is further entangled in those modes. And as Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita, as one is caught up in the 3 modes, one simply goes lower and lower. Generally, that's what happens. And in Kali Yuga, this Kali Yuga is saturated, just like a cloth saturated with water. Kali Yuga is saturated with the modes of Rajas and Tamas. Everywhere you look around, you see passion and ignorance. So passion is what's in it for me, immediate gratification, pleasure, doing activities for happiness, and ignorance is simply total illusion, doing the opposite of what is stated in Scripture. So and activities like intoxication, gambling, illicit sex, so these are activities in the mode of ignorance. And by coming across conferences or literatures, one is further entangled. Since the all-perfect persons are inhabitants of the transcendental abode, they do not derive any pleasure there. So Srila Prabhupada wrote the Srimad-Bhagavatam for the upliftment of human society. Right? So, Srimad-Bhagavatam is the Amala Purana. It's the spotless Purana. And Srimad-Bhagavatam is also extremely glorified by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Srimad-Bhagavatam is the natural conclusion of the Vedanta Sutra, and it is written by the same author, Vyasadeva, as the natural commentary. And Srimad-Bhagavatam is full of rasa. It is full of transcendental mellows. And one can derive so much pleasure from reading the Srimad-Bhagavatam. And that's why there is great emphasis on distribution of the Srimad-Bhagavatam. So the next verse in the 5th chapter of the of the first canto is Tadvag Visargo Janataga Viplavo Yasmin Pratishlokam Abhadavati Api Namani Anantasya Yasho Ankitani Yat Shrinvanti Gayanti Grinanti Sadhava. On the other hand, that literature, which is full of descriptions of the transcendental glories of the name, fame, form, pastimes, etc., of the unlimited Supreme Lord, is a different creation, full of transcendental words directed toward bringing about a revolution in the impious lives of this world's misdirected civilization. Such transcendental literature, even though imperfectly composed, are heard, sung, and accepted by purified men who are thoroughly honest. So we can see the potency of Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. It is meant towards bringing a revolution in the impious lives of this world's misdirected civilization. So we know this world is totally misdirected. Just look around you. It's crazy. There's conflict, madness everywhere, and there's total chaos. People are confused. And people are trying to bring about a revolution in their own ways. There's an uprising. There was the Arab Spring, there was that revolution. There's so many protests. But the real revolution is the spreading of the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. And the real revolution happens inside the heart. So when we read Prabhupada's books, you can feel a transformation occurring within your heart simply by reading it. Because Srila Prabhupada is a pure devotee. And he is empowered by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, empowered by a spiritual master, Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur. And his words are, and he himself said, these books have been dictated to me by the Supreme Lord Krishna, right? So these are actually Krishna's words coming out from the mouth of his pure devotee, Srila Prabhupada. So these books are extremely potent. The Bhaktivedanta purports are the main thing. Even more important than the verses are the purports of Srila Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada came to the USA with 200 sets of the first three volumes of the first canto. So Srila Prabhupada, at the age of 69, he boarded the Jaladuta, and from Cochin came, some trunks of the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam sets. So he only came with 40 rupees. Srila Prabhupada came with 40 rupees. But he had firm faith in the words, in the instructions of his spiritual master, and in the words of the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. And Srila Prabhupada, he painstakingly translated the first three volumes of the first canto. He went to great lengths to publish them. As I'm sure all of you are very well versed in the Leelamrita. And Prabhupada struggled so much, he had to, even finding paper was an issue. and then he had to find the printers from Vrindavan. He was going to Delhi regularly to print the Bhagavatam. He had no money to print the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. He did that. He was printing Back to Godhead. So Prabhupada came to America with the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, with 200 sets of the first 3 volumes of the first canto. So he came with that, and that's how he started his movement. As Prabhupada says, when he got off the Jaladuta, he didn't know whether to turn left or right. He had one contact, came to Boston, but he wasn't sure. But he had the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam and full faith. And he also wrote his prayers aboard the Jaladuta. Right? So I'll read some of those. Markine Bhagavad Dharma. Right? Prabhupada wrote these prayers at the Boston Harbor on September 18th. I think Prabhupada took sannyas on 17th September or 19th? 17th. So, 18th, the day after, is not the same year, obviously, but the next day on the same month. So in 1965, 18 September, at the Boston Harbor, Srila Prabhupada wrote these prayers. My dear Lord Krishna, you are so kind upon this useless soul, but I do not know why you have brought me here. Now you can do whatever you like with me. But I guess you have some business here, otherwise why would you bring me to this terrible place? We are aspiring to go to the West in India. In India, it's like everyone wants to go to USA, Silicon Valley, and make it big. Maybe start your own, have a startup. That's the dream, right? Or then come to Australia or go to London. But Prabhupada is saying, why have you brought me to this terrible place? Yes. For a devotee, Vrindavan is home. Most of the population here is covered by the material modes of ignorance and passion. Absorbed in material life, they think themselves very happy and satisfied, and therefore they have no taste for the transcendental message of Vasudeva. I do not know how they will be able to understand it. So Prabhupada is feeling a little helpless here. And that's a fact. People are absorbed, as we said earlier, in the modes of passion and ignorance, and they think themselves very happy. So someone who thinks themselves happy and satisfied, what's the need to inquire? And we see in Australia, people are relatively quite content with their circumstances. And therefore, they're proud and they don't want to hear about anything. It's very difficult to preach to people. It's very difficult to get people to come to lectures. I'm sure you find that too, right? For the talks, you get less people than you get for kirtans. It's hard enough to get people for kirtans. And for talks, it's even harder. Like we advertised a workshop, Transforming Lust into Love. And after running a campaign for 3 weeks and spending some money on it, we only got like 4 people. So we can see people are thinking, actually, I know about love. Why do I need to go in here? So I'm relatively happy and satisfied. Why does someone need to tell me? But 4 sincere souls have come, and so we'll try to preach to them. So, and we can see this is the challenge we are facing. But then Prabhupada says, but I know your causeless mercy can make everything possible because you are the most expert mystic. How will they understand the mellows of devotional service? Oh Lord, I'm simply praying for your mercy so that I will be able to convince them about your message. All living entities have become under the control of the illusory energy by your will. And therefore, if you like, by your will, they can also be released from the clutches of illusion. I wish that you may deliver them. Therefore, if you desire the deliverance, then only will they be able to understand your message. And now he introduces the Bhagavatam. The words of Srimad-Bhagavatam are your incarnation, and if a sober person repeatedly receives it with submissive oral reception, then he will be able to understand your message. So this is the solution, right? If a sober person receives the Bhagavatam with some degree of submissiveness and humility, then they can understand Krishna's message and try to overcome the three modes of natures, especially passion and ignorance. So the Bhadra Purnima is a project, I think was conceived by Vaisheshika Prabhu. It has the full endorsement of the GBC body. And in Melbourne temple, it kicked off on Gaur Purnima, and it is concluding today. So the goal was to distribute 150 Bhagavatam sets. They're pretty close to the target. They've done 130 Bhagavatam sets. So there's 20 more to be distributed, and it has to be done today. So who here doesn't have a Bhagavatam set? Raise your hands. You don't have? Okay. Anyone else? Everyone else has a Bhagavatam set? Very nice. So Prabhuji, today you have to get one. Srila Prabhupada said that, and those who are listening online, the online audience is a big audience. So if you don't have the Bhagavatam, today you have to order one. Because charity begins at home. Right? So how can we preach to the world if we don't have a Bhagavatam set ourselves? So we have to, the Bhagavatam set, so the Bhagavatam is Krishna personally being present in our home. Because the Bhagavatam is non-different from Krishna. So there's the book Bhagavat, as is said in the second chapter of the first canto, and there's the person Bhagavat. So the person Bhagavat lives their life and speaks as per the book Bhagavat. And the book Bhagavat is non-different from Krishna. So having Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam in your home is having Krishna there personally present. So yes, we have to, first of all, we need to have a Bhagavatam set. And then you can call your friends or anyone you know and try to sell them a set so we can make up the 20 sets today. I've got 2 sets at home, brand new. I know a couple of people, I'll call them and see if they, by Lord Chaitanya's mercy, if they take a book, if they take the Bhagavatam. I've never distributed a set. So I'm praying for empowerment and your mercy. Maybe I can distribute a set today. So yeah, reach out to friends, put the Bhagavatam in their homes. And Prabhupada said that every gentleman, this Bhagavatam needs to be in every gentleman's house. He wanted his sets to be in everyone's house. I remember in India, there used to be these salespeople who would come and try to sell us the Britannica, the encyclopedia. Right, so we are like the set salesmen and saleswomen. And I saw Prabhuji also had a stall on Radhashmi at the front here. It was very nice. And Prabhu told me they had sold 3 sets on that day so far. After that, did you sell any? Okay, so how many sets were sold on Radhashmi? Okay, but more than 3. Because you had sold 3, right?
2 was processed,
1 was sold. Okay, so
actually one more happened at 4 p.m. There was one devotee was standing there in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And he was just about to leave, and just at the closing time, the one more devotee, he made 1 set.
Mm.
So there was
One more. Yeah, that's amazing, isn't it? Just at closing time when you're about to pack up and someone comes and buys. It quite often happens like that in book distribution. One time I was standing, I remember one devotee, Prabhuram, he was standing on, we were doing books together on Swanson Street many years ago, outside the old Crossways. So he was unable to distribute, and out of frustration, he was leaning against the pillar, holding the books. And no one was buying, and then suddenly out of nowhere, this person tapped on his shoulder and said, "What do you got there?" And they bought the books, whatever he had in his hand. And that also happened to me once. I was at the corner of La Trobe and Swanson Streets when I was a brahmachari, and I think I just dyed my cloth that day, and I decided to go in my saffron clothes. So it was bright. I was like a fireman. The firemen have bright orange clothes. Yeah, we are there to extinguish the fire of material existence on behalf of Prabhupada. So I'm standing there despondent, nothing is happening. And then this lady walks to me and she says, "I saw you from the tram." She was in the tram and coming, from RMIT towards Flinders Street. She said, "I saw you from the tram, these bright orange clothes, and I thought I'll go and speak with you." And then she said, "What do you have?" And she bought the books. So it's like that. We just have to be there with the books, and then Krishna distributes the books somehow. If with our desire to be there, to represent the parampara, then the power comes from the parampara, and the books go. So yeah, these are some examples of miracles that happen, and how the Paramatma uses us as instruments. Nimitta matram bhavya savyasachi, right? Krishna says, "Become my instrument." So the Paramatma, the Super Soul, Krishna, he uses us as instruments if we desire to be one. So if we put ourselves in devotional service, in trying to do something, then we are used as instruments in spreading the transcendental movement. And Krishna gives us the credit. Krishna is so kind. We don't deserve any credit, but Krishna gives it to us. So yeah, Prabhupada is saying that if a person hears the Bhagavatam, then that is the solution. He will become liberated from the influence of the modes of ignorance and passion, and thus all inauspicious things accumulated in the core of the heart will disappear. How will I make them understand this message of Krishna consciousness? I am very unfortunate, unqualified, and the most fallen. Therefore, I am seeking your benediction that I can convince them, for I am powerless to do so on my own. So Srila Prabhupada is saying this out of his humility. He's not unfortunate, unqualified, and most fallen. It's the opposite of that. We are actually the most unfortunate, unqualified, and most fallen. And we are the recipients of Srila Prabhupada's mercy. and the prayers continue. So we can see that the Bhagavatam is the solution to solving the world's problems. And Prabhupada wanted the leading men of this world to read the Bhagavatam. So I was listening to a lecture by Sheshika Prabhu on Bhadra Purnima, and he was talking about placing the Bhagavatam in the White House. This is when Trump was president. He said, "Can someone call Trump? Someone should approach him and ask him to put a Bhagavatam in the White House." And he said he'll buy it. Trump will buy it. He had full confidence. Actually, someone did that. Some devotee contacted the White House, and he wanted to place the Bhagavatam in the Oval Office, in the presidential office. So anything is possible. So the Bhagavatam is meant for everyone, but especially for the leading men of this world. Because if they understand it, they are leaders, everyone follows them, and then there is some hope. Right? Like this Will Smith, he has read I think he reads Bhagavad Gita. Jay Shetty and some others are preaching to him. We can see his daughter, Willow, she made the album, Rise. So when the leading men take to Krishna consciousness or are favorable, we see great things happen. It's happening in front of us. We also saw like George Harrison. He was a leading man, a music Mahajan. So he took up Krishna consciousness, and so much happened. History happened, as you're aware. Bhaktivedanta manner, yes. And so Srila Prabhupada, he took sannyas, Hare Krishna, for this very reason. Srila Prabhupada, today is the day Prabhupada accepted sannyas. So Prabhupada accepted sannyas to further the Krishna consciousness movement. So Prabhupada's spiritual master, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he also accepted sannyas to spread Krishna consciousness. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was, as you know, he was a Grihastha initially. Right? Nimai Pandit. So he also accepted sannyas because he found people were not taking him too seriously. Some students were making fun of him, and especially at that time, he felt that as a preaching tactic, if he accepted sannyas, then everyone will offer him respects, dandavats, and they'll hear from a sannyasi. Even today, we see that people take sannyasis a little bit more seriously. Right? When you say, a monk is coming, it's easier to promote. Right? So, okay, everyone says, oh, monk is coming. Yeah, so I need to, maybe spiritual, person, I need to hear, maybe. I'll go and hear something. So, of course, we know sannyas is exploited in Kali Yuga, and generally, as a general rule, sannyas is forbidden in Kali Yuga because people cannot follow the high standards of sannyas. And everywhere we see there's scandals happening within the sannyas ashram. Especially in India, this, what is it? This god man fell down as some, they find out there's some sex scandal or there's money laundering or some crazy things happening. And even within our society we have seen, there's been challenges. So sannyas generally as an ashram is forbidden in Kali Yuga. But those who are qualified are encouraged to take it. So Srila Prabhupada, he was instructed by a spiritual master 3 times in his dreams to accept sannyas. So Prabhupada is empowered soul. He was instructed in his dreams to take sannyas. I'll read you something from the Leelamrita. So one night, Abhay had an unusual dream. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta appeared before him, beckoning. He was asking Abhay to leave home and take sannyas. Abhay awoke in an intensely emotional state. How horrible, he thought. He knew it was not an ordinary dream, yet the request seemed so difficult and unlikely. Take sannyas. So Srila Prabhupada felt that he couldn't do it immediately because, as you know, Prabhupada had a business at that time. He was in the pharmaceutical industry. He had a business in pharmaceuticals. So he felt he couldn't do it. Well, his idea was, I'll grow my business, I'll make it very successful. I'll use the money to print and distribute books. That was his vision. So Prabhupada was still 100% focused on the instructions of his spiritual master, which was to print and distribute books and to preach to the English-speaking world. So that was still his focus, but he wanted to go about it in a different way, through running a successful business. So in 1948, Srila Prabhupada had his own factory for pharmaceuticals, and so in 1948, he had to unfortunately close it because Prabhupada was struggling to pay his employees the wages. So it was quite a serious situation. He couldn't pay his employees. And since 1946, Prabhupada was behind his rent payments. So even the rent installments, he was struggling to meet them. And then gradually the sales totally dropped, and the whole enterprise became impossible to carry on. So Prabhupada is saying, I started a big factory in Lucknow. Those were the golden days. My business flourished like anything. Everyone in the chemical business knew about him. But then gradually, everything dwindled away. Then after that, with the help of some friends, he opened a small enterprise in Allahabad. So Allahabad is the same city where he had his pharmacy, the Prayag pharmacy, and that also failed 15 years before. So we can see Prabhupada's determination. Maybe, if you have one business fail, you get depressed. Because there's like serious losses. If you can't pay your employees, you can't pay the rent, you lost everything. But Prabhupada had multiple failed enterprises. So Prabhupada then moved to Allahabad with his son Brindaban, and there they continued to manufacture drugs, medicines, while the rest of his family was living in Calcutta at Banerjee Lane. So Prabhupada would be away for months at a time. So that was the first dream he had, where Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Then a second dream came, where Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati again was imploring Prabhupada and indicating that Prabhupada should take sannyas. So again, Prabhupada, he had to put that dream aside, the instructions aside, because Prabhupada thought, I'm a householder, I have so many responsibilities. I think he had 5 children, Prabhupada. He had 5 children. And he was thinking, why is Guru Maharaj asking me to take sannyas? It's not possible right now. Then after that, the Allahabad business was also unsuccessful. And he wrote to his servant, Gauranga, at present, the condition of our business is not good. When the condition gets better, and if you are free at that time, I will call for you. So Prabhupada, he strived, but he didn't get much results from his Allahabad business as well. And Prabhupada says he actually saw this through the eyes of scripture. So Prabhupada remembered this verse from the Srimad-Bhāgavatam, the 10th canto, 88th chapter, 8th verse. Yasyaham anu grinami harishye tad dhanam shanai tato dhanam tejanti asya swajana dukha dukkhitam. The personality of Godhead said, if I especially favor someone, I gradually deprive him of his wealth. Then the relatives and friends of such a poverty-stricken man abandon him. In this way, he suffers one distress after another. Pretty heavy. I'll think, what kind of favor is this? I joined Krishna consciousness to be peaceful and happy, to be materially successful, and also spiritually successful. I want to strike the right balance. I have a nice place, good property, good bank balance, nice family. So please give me that mercy. But if Krishna really favors you, and Prabhupada, you can say Prabhupada had multiple failed businesses. And before he had very successful business. We can see Krishna's plan, right? It is very evident now. But Prabhupada also saw Krishna's hand in this directly, that he made him a poverty-stricken man, and Prabhupada's family was not happy with him. And that's what happens. If you become a failure, then everyone goes away. The people who you think are your friends and family, who adore you and speak so highly about you, when you're a failure, it's like, they're polite to you, but they don't take you seriously. So that's what happened. So Prabhupada thought that his present circumstances were controlled directly by Krishna, and Krishna was forcing him to be in a helpless position. And we can say that Krishna was actually freeing Srila Prabhupada for preaching, right? By frustrating his plans, though his plans were transcendental. Prabhupada's plans were 100% transcendental. But Krishna was freeing Srila Prabhupada so he can be 100% dedicated to his mission. So Srila Prabhupada, he said, somehow or other my intention for preaching the message of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu increased and the other side decreased. I was not disinclined, but Krishna forced me. You must give it up. The history is known how it decreased. So then in 1950, Srila Prabhupada, he practically retired. He had a little bit touch, he was a little bit in touch with his business, but for the most part, he was a retired man. Then he says, not retired, but a little in touch with business, whatever is going on. Then almost it became nil. Whatever was there, all right, you do whatever you like. So then again, Srila Prabhupada had a dream. One night, Prabhupada had a dream, and this time it was a very striking dream. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur appeared in his dreams, the tall scholarly sannyasi, and he called to Abhay and indicated that he should follow him, and again repeatedly he called and motioned that Abhay should take sannyas. And he said, come, he urged, become a sannyasi. So Prabhupada awoke, he was taken back by that dream, and he thought of this instruction as another feature of the original instruction of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, which was, the first time Prabhupada met his spiritual master in Calcutta, where he told him, become an English preacher and spread Krishna consciousness throughout the Western world. So when the third time Prabhupada got this dream, he thought, okay, this is his spiritual master telling him, giving him the same instruction in a different way, and now telling him how to do it by taking sannyas. So Abhay reasoned that his spiritual master was saying, now take sannyas and you will actually be able to accomplish this mission. Formerly, the time was not right. So Prabhupada, he deliberated and he reasoned that a sannyasi dedicates his body, mind and words to the service of Krishna. And he thought, I'm actually doing that already. But by taking sannyas, it would be more effective to do that. It will make it easier. So then Prabhupada, he decided in his heart, he's going to take sannyas. So he approached Bhakti Vilas Tirtha Maharaj. So Bhakti Vilas Tirtha Maharaj was one of his godbrothers in the Chaitanya Math. So the Chaitanya Math had split after the disappearance of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And so he approached Bhakti Vilas Tirtha Maharaj, who was formerly Kunja Vihari, and he was the leader of the Chaitanya Math in Calcutta at that time. So he thought that Chaitanya Math is still the headquarters of his spiritual master's mission. And Chaitanya Math had been the most prized acquisition. And since 1948, it was under the legal ownership of Tirtha Maharaj. So Prabhupada felt that if he should take sannyas and go to America, he should give Chaitanya Math the first opportunity to support his work. So he felt, okay, if I'm going to America, I should work with Chaitanya Math and give them the opportunity to support me in my mission. So in 1959, April 1959, Abhay wrote to Tirtha Maharaj inquiring about taking sannyas as well as printing some of his manuscripts, which he can take with him to America. And since at that time no one was going abroad, so he thought that Chaitanya Math might support his desire. So this is the response he got from Tirtha Maharaj. So Tirtha Maharaj replied that Abhay should first join the Chaitanya Math. He mentioned that strife still lingered. Those who are against Chaitanya Math, they are motivated by their individual ambitions. Anyone who was against the Chaitanya Math, he said, was acting illogically and against the instructions of Bhaktivedanta Saraswati. So according to Tirtha Maharaj, the thing for Abhay to do, the thing he had neglected to do for so many years, was to join the Chaitanya Math and act under his direction. Tirtha Maharaj mentioned several members of Chaitanya Math who had recently accepted sannyas, and he said Abhay could become one in time. He invited Abhay to reside at Chaitanya Math. The house that we have, there are rooms that are airy and well lit. We will treat you exclusively. There won't be any difficulty. We will take care that no inconveniences are caused. But as for printing books, we are eagerly awaiting to print the books like Sat Sandarbha Vedanta, based on devotional service, and many other rare books by the Goswamis. First, we will print them. Books written by you will be checked by the editorial staff, and if the funds can be raised, then they can be printed according to priority. The books will be printed only if they are favorable for the service of Chaitanya Math. Therefore, if the fund is raised, then there is a plan to go abroad as well. So Prabhupada wasn't encouraged by this response. Basically, they were saying, we'll give you sannyas in time. And they were saying that you have to follow, if you are living in Chaitanya Math, then you have to follow what we are saying. You have to follow our bureaucratic process. And you have to live here. Gradually we'll give you sannyas. Our priority is to print some other books. And your books will be, if we feel they're suitable, then we'll print them. If we have the money. And we'll decide when you go abroad, if you go at all. So Prabhupada wasn't very encouraged by this response, obviously. And Prabhupada felt that they actually don't have the money and they don't have the spirit of supporting him, and they don't understand their spiritual master's true desire. So Prabhupada felt actually there's no point in going to Calcutta, and he's felt that I already have a airy room, well-lit room in the Radha Damodar temple in Vrindavan. Why do I need to go to Calcutta to do the same thing? So then Prabhupada thought, I'll approach some other god brother for sannyas. So Prabhupada, this is what Prabhupada says. There was no point going in Calcutta just to reside in an airy, well-lit room that he already had in Vrindavan. Abhay wrote back to Tirtha Maharaj, mentioning his direct order from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta to preach to the English-speaking people. He wanted to go to the West right away, and he had thought that Chaitanya Math would welcome his offer. Both Abhay and Tirtha Maharaj had their responsibilities, but perhaps they could work together to carry out the desire of the spiritual master. Abhay asked Tirtha Maharaj to reconsider. On the 7th of May, 1959, Tirtha Maharaj wrote back, "My suggestion is don't make any hasty decisions. For the time being, you stay with us and engage yourself in the service of the society and accept 3 Dandi sannyas. The purpose of accepting 3 Dandi is to serve the society." If that is your desire, then Sri Chaitanya Math will decide about your going to America to preach and make all the arrangements. It can never be the principle of the society to let one act according to his individual attempt or desire. The society will decide after consulting with the heads what is to be done by whom. This is what I want to say. First of all, it is necessary to identify oneself with the society. So, Prabhupada's vision was much broader. He wasn't thinking small time. And generally we try to work within the society, and that's how we should function. But this is a different context, obviously. and then he further writes, in order to preach in America or in other foreign countries, it is important to have a defined organization in the background. And secondly, it is necessary to establish oneself in India before going to preach in the foreign countries. Now, it is that there are no conferences or meetings in the West as before. Communication is done through media of television. So, yeah, Prabhupada could understand where they're coming from, and then he just decided that there's no point working with them because he's aging and he doesn't have much time. So then Prabhupada next turned to Keshava Maharaj, who was in Mathura. And Keshava Maharaj, to the contrary, said, take sannyas immediately. And Prabhupada Abhay was feeling a little bit, he had some uncertainty about sannyas, and that was kicked out by Keshava Maharaj, because Keshava Maharaj urged him to take sannyas. And Keshava Maharaj was very insistent that Prabhupada take sannyas. So here Prabhupada says, I was sitting alone in Vrindavan writing. My godbrother insisted to me, Bhaktivedanta Prabhu, you must do it. Without accepting the renounced order of life, nobody can become a preacher. So he insisted. No, not he insisted, practically my spiritual master insisted. He wanted me to become a preacher, so he forced me through this godbrother. You accept, so unwillingly I accepted. Keshava Gaudiya Math is located in the midst of Mathura's downtown bazaars. Not sure if it's still there. Its main entrance, an arched doorway, led into a courtyard open to the sky through a metal grating above. The architecture was similar to that of the Vamsi Gopalji temple. The atmosphere was secluded, as in a monastery. Abhay was a familiar, welcomed figure. He had lived there, written and studied in the library here, edited the Gaudiya Patrika, and donated the deity of Lord Chaitanya, who stood on the altar beside the deities of Radha and Krishna, Sri Sri Radha, Vinod Vihariji. But his visit during September of 1959 was not an ordinary one. He entered the mutt dressed in white, Abhay Babu, but he would soon be leaving dressed in saffron, a Swami. Abhay had been living as a renunciate for 9 years. There was no need for him to observe a ceremony or to proclaim himself a sadhu by changing to saffron dress. But it was the parampara system that a man take 3 dandi sannyas at the end of his life. He was aware of cheating sannyasis. Even in Vrindavan, he had seen so-called sadhus who did not preach, but simply spent their days hunting for chapatis. We see that, like you go to some holy place in India, some place of pilgrimage, you see sadhus aligned towards the main temple or wherever the main attraction there is, and they're literally begging for chapatis and money. And some are smoking also. Some Swamis of Vrindavan even indulged illicitly in what they had supposedly come here to reject, sex life. Such persons were making a mockery of sannyas. And there were the caste Goswamis also, who lived like ordinary householders, running temples as a business to support their families and accepting honor and donations from the public on the false basis of birth. So in India, this is very common. You see temples everywhere. And it's pretty much a business. The deity is there, they do some kirtan or artis, and people come there, put money there, and they have festivals, and this is how they live. It's a business. But temple is not a business. The business of a temple is to educate people in Krishna consciousness. So Abhay knew of these abuses of sannyas, but he also knew the real purpose of sannyas. Sannyas was for preaching. So on the morning of September 17th, 1959, in the 50 by 25 foot deity room on the second floor of the Keshavji Mutt, a group of devotees sat before the deities of Radha Krishna and Lord Chaitanya. The deities were colorfully dressed in royal clothing and silver crowns. Radharani's right hand face palm forward in benediction for the worshipper. At her side, Her left hand held a flower for Krishna. Krishna stood like a dancer, placing his right leg in a casual tiptoe pose before his left, playing his long silver flute, which he held gracefully to his red lips. His long black hair reached down past his shoulders, and the garland of marigolds around his neck reached down to his knees. On his right stood the deity of Lord Chaitanya, his right arm raised, left arm at his side, his body straight, feet together. He was a soft golden color, and he had large eyes, a well-formed red mouth, and straight black hair down to his shoulders. One level below the deities were pictures of the spiritual masters in disciplic succession: Jagannath Das Babaji, Bhaktivedanta Thakur, Gaur Kishore Das Babaji, Bhaktivedanta Saraswati, Bhakti Pragya Keshav Maharaj. Abhay sat on a mat of kusha grass beside 90-year-old Sanatan, who was also to receive sannyas that day. So there was another person receiving sannyas, Sanatan. Sitting opposite the two candidates, Narayan Maharaj, Keshava Maharaj's disciple, prepared to conduct the ceremony of mantras and offerings of grains and ghee into the fire. Akinchan Krishnadas Babaji, Abhay's godbrother, known for sweet singing, played mridanga and sang Vaishnav bhajans. Sitting on a raised asan, His Holiness B.P. Keshava Maharaj presided. Since there had been no notices or invitations, only the mutt's few residences attended. Narayan Maharaj chanted the required mantras and then sat back silently while B.P. Keshava Maharajji lectured. Then, to everyone's surprise, Keshava Maharaj asked Abhay to speak. This is interesting. So this is like your initiation. You're getting initiation and then your guru says, you speak. It's not done generally, right? You'll be taken back. So Prabhupada was surprised, and his sannyas guru is asking him to speak on his sannyas initiation. Then, to everyone's surprise, Keshav Maharaj asked Abhay to speak. Abhay had not expected this. As he looked around at the gathering of devotees, he understood that the common language was Hindi. Only Keshav Maharaj and a few others spoke English, yet he knew he must speak in English. After Abhay's speech, each initiate received his sannyas danda, the traditional high staff made of 4 bamboo rods bound together and completely enwrapped in saffron cloth. They were given their sannyas garments, 1 piece of saffron cloth for dhoti and 1 for a top piece, uttara, and 2 strips of cloth for underwear, kopin. They also received tulsi neck beads and the sannyas mantra. Keshav Maharaj said that Abhay would now be known as Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj, and that Sanatan Muni would be Muni Maharaj. After the ceremony, the 2 sannyasis posed for a photo, standing on either side of their sannyas guru, who sat in a chair. This is the famous photo. This is Keshav Maharaj in the center, Prabhupada on his left. That's good someone took a photo, historical photo. B.P. Keshav Maharaj didn't impose any strictures on Abhay. He simply encouraged him to go on preaching. Yet Abhay knew that to become A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami did not mean merely that he was giving up family, home comforts and business that he had done 5 years ago. So, Prabhupada was practically a sannyasi. 5 years ago, when all his businesses failed, he was more or less living as a vanaprastha. He was like a sannyasi. Changing from white cloth to saffron cloth from Abhay Babu to Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj had a special significance. It was only a matter of time before Bhaktivedanta Swami would travel to the west as Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati had ordained. This was Bhaktivedanta Swami's realization of his new sannyas status. So in the month of Bhadra, on the day on which Vishwarup accepted sannyas, Prabhupada also accepted sannyas. So Prabhupada accepted sannyas in the month of Bhadra, on the day Vishwarup accepted. So, very special day today. This Prabhupada accepted sannyas. Today is Bhadra Purnima, and Melbourne Temple is concluding their set marathon. Very auspicious day for us to pray to the deities, to seek blessings, that we can be an instrument in Lord Chaitanya's mission of spreading Krishna consciousness however we can. Whether you're a book distributor, you're a preacher, you're a cook, garland maker, worshipping the deities. So it's all in the service of the Sankirtan movement. So Prabhupada gave this analogy. We'll finish. Apologies, it's 9:05. That he gave the analogy of the Indian railways. So in the Indian railways, there's 1 million roles there. There's the chaiwala, and there's someone looking after the tracks, someone taking the bookings, someone maintaining the trains, and then there's someone driving the train. But Prabhupada said, as long as the wheels of the train are moving, the railway is going forward. So in the same way, as long as the preaching is happening, no matter what you're doing in ISKCON, as long as you're contributing towards that, you're moving forward and you're doing. So you could be running a business, you could be doing a job, but if you're connected somehow, then you're also moving forward. You're in the train and you're going forward back to Godhead. So we'll end here. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki. Bhadra Purnima ki. 140 set distribution ki. Hare Krishna.